Hello, we're back. My name is Seth Juarez. This is Channel 9, and we are at the Seattle Convention Center for Build
2017.
You were on the keynote stage, my friend.
I was.
And you introduced something brand new. But first, before we get into that, because I'm really excited about it, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us what you do.
I will, sure. So my name is Sam George. I am the director of Azure IoT.
Okay.
So I get to work on a bunch of cool stuff, both in the cloud and out on devices. It's a great space to be in.
I mean, like, it's all about IoT nowadays with the amount of computing that we can do with like things that are this big.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing. Tell me about the journey of IoT. Like, how did you get involved in IoT, and then why are you excited about it today?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we feel great about is that Microsoft was really on the forefront of IoT. I mean, we had our IoT services, our IoT solutions in market ahead of many of our competitors. And we're still doing that, even like with Azure IoT Edge. Azure IoT Edge is something that doesn't exist elsewhere, and so we're really proud of that. We're really proud of being able to get solutions to customers right as they need it.
Right.
And so stay right on the bleeding edge. Yep.
So before we get to IoT Edge, because I do want to do that, I want to make sure that everyone knows that this is all about you. So if you have some questions, please get them into us. We want to answer all of your questions. Let's get into Azure IoT Edge. What is it? Because you spent like 3 minutes talking about something that to me was like, holy cow, something really just changed.
Yeah.
Why don't you get into IoT Edge a little bit?
Yeah. So for those who didn't see in the keynote, what we showed is a scenario where a lot of these industrial pieces of equipment are being connected to Azure to predict their maintenance needs, to shut them down in the event of an impending failure. And that's sort of the high industrial side of IoT. IoT is also broadly applicable all the way through consumer. And what you see is that in IoT, what happens is that telemetry is being sent from devices to the cloud, and then you're using machine learning to figure out all sorts of interesting insights.
Right.
The demo this morning was about figuring out when that machine needed servicing so that it didn't have any downtime. It cost millions of dollars and all that.
Sure.
Now, if a machine needs to be shut down to prevent failure, you don't want to worry about local network drops. Right? You want to have that running right on the machine.
Right.
And so companies like Sandvik Coromant are having to develop that logic themselves, right? They're using Azure and Azure IoT in the cloud, but they also have to develop some fail-safe logic right on the device. The whole idea between Azure IoT Edge is a cross-platform runtime, an endpoint that you can put on IoT devices, and coupled with some capabilities that we have in Azure to be able to export Azure services and run them right on the IoT devices. So now Sandvik Coromant doesn't have to custom build software to protect their machines. They can simply take their cloud logic and run it right there.
It feels like there had to have been some kind of evolution to get to this realization.
Yeah.
Because initially when I was looking at IoT, there's a lot of stuff happening, push it into IoT Hub, and then do magic up there, and then we can talk about magic down there.
Yep.
You're saying that some of the computation now needs to move down.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And so what we're starting to see is, I mean, we saw this years ago that, with the billions of devices that are being connected and the trillions of messages that are sent and all that volume of data, that there would need to be a natural equilibrium between the cloud and the physical edge,
sure.
Right? And so you'd want processing to be able to run out on the edge. Data, like Satya was saying this morning, data has gravity.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to overcome that gravity, you can simply move compute to where it is. And so that's what we're doing with Azure IoT Edge, is being able to take cloud functionality and run it right on IoT devices themselves.
But I'm trying to understand how that's like, it feels like we're getting a bit of the cloud and we're pushing it down. To
we are.
But when I think of IoT, I think of those little goofy robots I made with Raspberry Pi.
Right.
Like, how are we putting the cloud on a Raspberry 2 device? Or is it something else that I'm not understanding?
Yeah, well, I'll cover that. So it's interesting to talk about the frame of where all of this exists. So if you think about these, technology tends to go in waves of innovation.
Sure.
You think about the first wave to talk about here, there's cloud, which is globally available, unlimited compute resources. IoT is really built on that because IoT devices tend to be geographically dispersed, right? There's lots and lots of them.
And tiny.
And you need unlimited compute capacity. Well, Edge is really just the next logical step. So if you think about IoT, it's really devices sending data to the cloud, telemetry and things like that, and receiving commands. the next logical step is to be able to take some of the cloud intelligence that you're doing with that data and to be able to move it down to the edge itself, especially as IoT devices start to generate more and more data. So then you get to an equilibrium where you're still sending data to the cloud for training, but you can execute that training right on the device itself.
That's interesting. And now the scenario that you're bringing up with this company that did the maintenance makes a little more sense, because if they have a internet problem, that machine is not going to be able to know about anything.
That's right. And they need it. They need to be able to protect it. And then on top of that, on top of Edge, we see AI happening at the same time. And so what the whole idea between Azure IoT Edge is to provide that platform for cloud intelligence to be able to run, but also for AI, to be able to push AI out to the edge.
So I'm a programmer. Like, when it comes down to it, I might have a fancy shirt that I bought at the Gap yesterday so I don't look like a fool, because then my wife will tell me I look like a fool on TV. So I'm just a regular dev. I'm trying to understand, what am I doing to make this work? Because it feels like I said originally, like these devices are tiny. How am I making the cloud execute down there at that level? How does one do that?
So the whole idea is this Azure IoT Edge runtime. Cross-platform runtime, runs on Windows and Linux. You can install it on devices smaller than Raspberry Pis. And then say, for example, you're using Azure Stream Analytics to do some complex event processing. Like you're looking for averages of all sorts of telemetry, right? And you want to move that out to the edge. What Azure Stream Analytics is working on is be able to take Azure Stream Analytics jobs and package them up in Docker-compatible containers. And then Azure IoT Edge, working with IoT Hub. IoT Hub is the management plane that can deliver all that functionality and also still manage that device. So then the steps are simply export from Azure Stream Analytics, use Azure IoT Hub as the management plane, and push all that work out to the cloud. So for you as a programmer, it will just feel like I wrote an Azure Stream Analytics query, I then clicked a button and exported it, and then I clicked another button and I have it running on a device.
And this is going to be like on a Raspberry Pi too.
Smaller than that.
I mean, this is, to me, is amazing. You said Docker like when you were talking about Docker containers, I was like, hold on, a Docker container, but is that actually running on the device?
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to explain this to me. It's like blowing my mind here.
Well, so both Windows as well as many versions of Linux that are being used in IoT support Docker-compatible containers. And so that already works. We're simply taking advantage of that as a mechanism to push cloud intelligence out to these devices.
So is this container replacing the runtime of the actual device?
Simply augmenting it. No, the device still has its operating system.
Okay.
You're just taking little bits of functionality, packaging them up in containers as a transport mechanism and activation.
I see.
Yeah.
So because, I've seen a scenario where IoT Hub can send messages back to the devices, and this has been in there for a while.
That's right.
But now these messages are not just messages, they're like, you should run this.
Yes, exactly. Device management.
Right.
So actually since last November, we've had device management capabilities, and the whole idea behind Azure IoT Edge is it takes advantage of that IoT Hub device management capability to not just manage the software on the device, but also manage now these cloud workloads that are running on it. That makes sense.
I mean, that's amazing. And logically, now that you're talking about this, it makes sense, right? Because the cool thing about IoT Hub is that you could literally just hook up all of these devices to it, and you can say, oh, this device is a bad one, and shut it off.
That's right.
It's like you're managing it. Now you're saying, instead of just passing back little tiny messages, you can pass back computation.
That's right. That's exactly right. To send compute power to where data is.
That's amazing. Right. So tell me about, like you mentioned a little bit how you came about this. What are some of the scenarios that you found aside from the one that you just mentioned? Because I want devs I want to feel like this is real, like get our hands a little pruny in this. So tell us about some of the scenarios that you've seen.
There's a bunch of scenarios. So ranging from commercial to consumer. So over on the commercial side, you see edge processing being used for adapting existing devices. So, let's say I have an existing industrial device that speaks some legacy protocol, but I want to be able to adapt that and take that data and slurp it into the cloud and perform analytics there. Like, for example, we just recently shipped an Azure IoT Suite pre-configured solution called Connected Factory that's all about connecting to roughly 37 million existing industrial pieces of equipment that speak a certain protocol, OPC. And Azure IoT Edge supports an OPC adapter. So I can simply put a gateway running Azure IoT Edge down on a factory floor, connect to all the factory machines, and then stream it to Azure and use Azure Time Series Insights. And now I can visually inspect all of that data. And I was never able to do that before. So
I mean, here's another realization I'm having, which is, this is really exciting. In certain parts of Europe, for example, there's some very stringent laws regarding what you can send up to the cloud and what you can't.
Absolutely.
In fact, I was at Croke Park where they were doing this IoT solution where they were taking pictures of crowd movement so they know where people were going. You can't upload that data to the cloud, but you can send down compute to the edge to do computation on the images. Is that the kind of scenario you're looking at?
Yeah, and I'd say certainly for, you bring up a good point, which was around Europe and data sovereignty and data protection. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we built a national cloud in Germany that's run by a German company to provide that level of guarantee. But yeah, you're absolutely right, is that there's a lot of times where you just want processing power to be able to run and keep data local.
And the cool thing is, like, even going further, I could create these compute things in the cloud with some test images that are perfectly safe, and then use the computational power that it learned and push it down to work on the actual images too.
And that's a really important point. So part of what we're enabling with this portability is symmetry. Because if you think about it, once you get adept at pushing cloud workloads out to the edge, the very next step is, now I want to set up a CI/CD pipeline in the cloud where I can completely test that device and mock it in the cloud and run my entire end-to-end CI/CD pipeline. And then on a successful pass, then I want to just container deploy to the edge.
That's crazy.
And so that's why we're building the symmetry between the two.
So I'm going to get into the CI/CD stuff, but we have some questions.
Yeah, sure.
When you say devices smaller than a Raspberry Pi, what kind of devices are you referring to? I can imagine a big machine with multiple IoT monitors attached. Would these devices be able to talk to each other? So the first one is, what kind of devices are we talking about?
Sure. So as small as 128 megabytes of memory with a single CPU, so Raspberry Pis are much more capable than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's very small.
And so let's get in now to the CI/CD stuff, because that was a good question from Steven. By the way, keep your questions coming, because it feels like this is like the next revolution of IoT to me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned kind of fast the whole CI/CD pipeline, which is continuous integration, continuous delivery. Describe what that process is like now using Azure IoT Edge.
So with traditional systems, what you see, especially in IoT, you're creating effectively an embedded system that's running on an IoT device, right? And so you need to find someone who's familiar with embedded programming, right? Which is much different than cloud programming. And part of what we're doing with Azure IoT Edge is making it so that I can take my cloud solution development skills and run them and power the logic that's running right on an IoT device. So I don't have to be an embedded developer anymore. And
that's really cool, right? Because now I'm effectively an embedded developer. Let's just say I build a machine learning thing or whatever.
That's right.
I can now here's a good question that's coming to my mind. Everything that I do on the cloud can be pushed down, or is there certain subset?
Well, certain things make sense and certain things don't. So for example, if you're using a cognitive service in the cloud that's trained on a massive data set, and it needs to consult that data set in order to operate, that's a good example of something that's not really portable to the edge, right? But there are lots of things that are. For example, in the Sandvik Coromant demo that I showed this morning, just being able to look at telemetry coming from a device and figure out whether it needs an emergency shutdown, that can absolutely be done. In fact, we demoed it in my session today on Azure IoT Edge, where we showed taking a machine learning module, exporting it in a Docker container, running it down on a Raspberry Pi. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about, because it's good to think about what should and shouldn't run at the edge, what I'm thinking of is there certain, because I'm thinking machine learning models, because I'm a machine learning guy, and so predictive models, obviously. What are some other types of computations that you could or should move down to the edge?
There's definitely a need for video processing at the edge, and that's honestly driving a lot of things. So you can imagine a smart meeting example where you want to know who's talking in a room, for example. If you're going to do that, you have two options. One is stream lots and lots of video data to the cloud. The other is to simply do some of the recognition, for example, face recognition, just faces, right, down there, and then match against people in a large directory in the cloud, right? So now you're just, instead of sending video streams, you're just simply sending images back and forth.
And that's
So you start partitioning the workload.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're designing, obviously designing IoT things is just hard on its own. Like it's like these things are really nice in a lab, right?
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about these, like how do we deal with connectivity issues? Because again, I went to this place called Croke Park.
Yeah.
And they were doing these things called smart cities, and they were using a stadium as sort of like the test tube of an actual city. And like the whole thing seemed real easy to me because I'm like, oh, that's easy. And I'm like, what challenges do you run into? Like, well, frankly, Seth, it was connectivity and sometimes like weird interference. Like, how does moving things to the edge help alleviate some of these problems?
Well, certainly the whole idea behind edge is to be able to run compute right by the data, even when there's intermittent network connectivity. The other thing is, one of the things we focused on as a team is building connectivity partnerships.
Right.
Like we have partnerships with a lot of folks and a lot of options for getting your IoT devices, even if they're using cellular connectivity connected to IoT Hub. So yeah, but that's a big idea behind this edge stuff, is to be able to move compute right where data is being generated. And then if you're doing analytics and you need to send that later, you can do store and forward right there. And then when the network picks back up, then you can send that up.
And I saw, and I didn't know about this, but there are some pretty robust edge devices as well. Like, for example, Dell has this edge device.
Absolutely.
It's really nice.
Yep.
Tell me about those kind of devices and how those can help with edge computing as well.
Yeah, there's a bunch of partners, from Intel to Dell to HP. A lot of them have some very sophisticated, what's really starting to be referred to as IoT gateway hardware.
Right.
That do all sorts of sophisticated things. In addition to being general purpose compute devices, they also can provide really, really robust security, like network packet inspection, all sorts of sophisticated security isolation techniques. And so that's a very common trend that you're seeing in IoT. This gateway pattern that we're, sort of taking advantage of with Azure IoT Edge and providing a platform for customers to offload is being adopted by all of the major hardware vendors.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was traveling to, I was in Kenya, and we went to their Kenya Wildlife Reserve, and the guy that's in charge, the IT manager, came to us and said, we want to build something that tells us when the lions escape.
Yeah.
And I was thinking there, well, how do I connect?
It sounds like a good idea.
How do I connect? Because he's like, we don't want to find out after it's bit somebody, right? And I'm like, the biggest thing, I was like, if I were to build this, my biggest concern would be connectivity to the cloud.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that as long as it's connected long enough to be able to get that package,
Yeah.
then that model will work irrespective of whether it's connected to the larger cloud,
That's
as
right.
long as it's connected to the network.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so you can do local alerting, for example. Yep.
And I mean, that to me, like, that was the huge gap that I had when I was like, okay, I want to make this, right? Because number one, I want to be able to say I stopped tigers or lions from eating people, which is kind of fun.
Generally good.
But the biggest hole in my mind was, how do we do this in a semi-connected way?
Yep. And that's how.
And I mean, I can imagine a scenario where you bring in this huge sort of Wi-Fi or whatever satellite, and you download the thing from it, you set it up, and it's good, and then you keep building, you have it store data, then you come back in a month, take that data, push it up, and then, I mean, is that the kind of scenario you're envisioning?
Yep, exactly. That's what edge computing is all about.
Wow, that's amazing. So what is the future for edge computing? What are some things that we need to look out for? And then as a developer, how should I start thinking about building IoT? There's so many questions.
Yeah.
I have a lot of them. How should I start thinking about building these things in this manner?
Yeah. Well, the thing I'd say about IoT, and that we talk to developers, both developers and companies about, is that IoT is very real and it's really here. There's lots and lots of companies that are already taking advantage of it. The thing that I'd say is that start simple. Start with a really well-defined use case. Something you want, like preventing tigers from eating people is a great example. Not super hard to do, right? And start there and then evolve. What you'll find is that you'll naturally evolve into edge scenarios, right? And that the data and the insights that you can get from even simple IoT projects. For example, being able to know, if you're a company that's using HVAC, right, in your buildings.
Yeah, pretty much everybody.
Pretty much everybody. Knowing whether or not you've actually got a problem by being able to detect, there's a sensor, there's a flap open on the heat exchange, and that means that the heat's always running and the air conditioning's always trying to cool it. That's a really silly example where it just looks like the building's fine because the temperature's normal, but unless you're able to detect some of the state of those IoT devices, you don't have the insights into why your energy bill's so high.
And like I said, it's amazing because like this evolution to me is really nice because I thought it was amazing that Azure IoT Hub could send back a message to the device.
Yeah.
I thought that was impressive, but now
to billions of devices. Yeah.
It's a billions of devices. Yeah. And I mean, I always think in terms of one and then it'll scale.
Yeah.
But now to be able to send actual, this is what you should do.
That's right.
That's even more impressive to me.
And that's Edge.
Yeah,
yep.
I feel like we keep coming back to that. So let's talk about, as a developer, how should I think about building these things? Like now that we know IoT is here, I'm trying to make it a little more real for programmers because we're talking in really interesting terms, but I want to be able to say I can do this now.
Yeah.
What is the thing that I can do now, and how should I start thinking about building my application to take advantage of this?
So there's a couple things. So we already have our IoT suite available. You can go and push a button and get an end-to-end working solution in about 5 minutes.
Right.
You can also start with just simply using IoT Hub and one of our starter kits and connecting it to something like Azure Time Series Insights. All of that takes about 5 minutes to manually set up, and you're off and running. You're able to inspect data from your IoT devices, and it's very easy to get started now.
So now the next question is, and this might be maybe a tricky one, but can you speak to security when it comes to these things? Recently, there's been a spat of like IoT security. Like I don't want my smart oven to be like, I'm not turning off, you know? Can you speak to security about these kinds of things?
Absolutely. Okay. So security is something that we've had a very strong focus on since we got started with Azure IoT. And that takes many different forms. So for example, only supporting secure protocols between Azure IoT Hub and devices. Pushing security standards. For example, we just recently announced a partnership with STMicro and Micron over a new standard called DICE, Device Integrity Composition Engine.
That's amazing.
That's about taking very small devices and making them secure. We have a program called Azure Security, the Security Program for Azure IoT, and that's all about having third-party auditors that we trust that can go and meet customers and inspect their IoT solutions.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And find exploits and provide remediation so that we can keep you safe. I could spend an hour with you on all the work that we've done on security, but we have all of the resources to help customers thread the needle and keep safe on IoT security.
And I recently learned just about Windows 10 IoT, this notion of TPM and registering with IoT Hub and having IoT Hub, like you could do a machine learning algorithm that says, that's a rogue one. It could revoke access to, I mean, it's pretty amazing the amount of security effort that's being put into this.
It really is,
Awesome.
All the way from devices to the cloud.
So what's the future of this kind of thing? I mean, it's like I'm already like, what's the next thing? I mean, what should we be orienting ourselves towards with this kind of technology? Yeah,
well, I'd say definitely what we see is get started now with IoT. And a lot of times the way we talk to customers and developers is, what's a problem that you're wrestling with? Tell us something, like if you can know something in real time from the physical world, what could you do different? That's often a better way to start IoT than thinking about, getting a starter kit and, sending temperature and humidity to the cloud. It's like, for example, your Tiger example is a good one. It's like there's a problem, and if I knew something when I wasn't there, I could do something about it. So we already have great starter kits and products to get started quickly. Now's a great time. I'd say for IoT Edge, that's already available. You can go out to GitHub and try it right now. We have a bunch of capabilities that are already there. The new things that we announced today are coming, and you can sign up for previews of those, and those will be coming soon.
And I'm a machine learning guy. That's what I went to school for. I love the idea of moving predictive analytics
right out
closer
to the edge.
To where the data is. I mean, to me,
makes sense.
That's an amazing thing. And we have about 2 minutes. We have a special video that I want to show about AI, because I mean, AI. It feels like when Satya came up, he's like, "This is it. I mean, this is AI. We need to start thinking about it. We need to start consuming it." I love what we're doing with IoT Edge, but we have a video with some partners talking a little bit about some of the stuff that they're doing with AI. Are we ready with that video? Let's do it. Roll the videotape.
AI is not the future anymore. It's here. We can use it.
Hi, Ariel. You have 2 urgent messages. It will take you 2 minutes to complete.
We developers need to follow the stream. We need to develop what people need.
You push a button and publish that skill on Cortana's skill store, and it's boom available. It's phenomenal.
Cortana has the kind of reach that no other platform has. We've got millions of devices and users that are leveraging Cortana to do their day-to-day job.
Technology-wise and on the support-wise, it is really amazing right now. By partnering with Microsoft, there's nothing more which a small company can't dream about.
Cortana is unique in the way that it's a hybrid platform. You get a visual experience. It engages all the senses.
When using bot framework, you are writing the code once. You can now publish it to many different channels.
Microsoft understands developers and technology. If they're happy building on your platform, they can focus on the things that they're really good at.
So it's very easy to go from an idea to building a Cortana skill very, very quickly.
Voice recognition, natural language processing, this is all on the cutting edge. It's good to be here early learning about it together with our partners.
What really excites me about this partnership is the ability to take this dream and make it a reality.
It's all just new space that we're all learning and growing in, and Cortana skills will continue to evolve, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go.
Let's do this.
And I love that video because like companies like OpenTable, right, where you go into a restaurant, I mean, they could take advantage of AI both in the cloud and now with the edge, they can move it down and do like, hey, this table is probably going to be open in the next 10 minutes or something.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It looks like you have a really good diagram there. What do you got there?
Yeah, so what this is a little bit of a blow-up view about all of the parts in Azure IoT Edge.
Love it.
For a full explanation of this, I'd encourage you to check out our talk, which was cached. There's a really, really rich roadmap here that we've got. And sign up for previews now. You can start using Azure IoT Edge right out of the box.
Awesome. This has been really informative. Thanks so much for helping clarify this. We're really living in a new age with IoT Edge and with AI now at the edge and AI in the cloud. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Seth Juarez, and we will be back shortly with tons of awesome sessions and interviews. Hopefully, you'll stick around. We'll see you in a little bit.